The red dwarf star of Virex 9 burned like a dying eye, its weak light bleeding across a system no sane species had ever tried to tame. Radiation storms rippled through space, gravity wells twisted unpredictably, and the planet below groaned beneath tectonic stress that never truly slept. That was why humans had come. Now, that was why the Zalthari Dominion was here to make an example of them. High Huntress Zaelvira stood on the command dais of her flagship, claws folded behind her back as the fleet tore out of hyperspace. 47 warships bloomed into real space, their hulls curved and bladed like living predators. Energy shields flared, asserting dominance over the fragile void. "Confirm target," she said, her voice smooth, confident. "Acknowledged," replied the navigation officer. "Human system. Virex 9. One registered settlement. Minimal defense signatures." Zaelvira's mandibles flexed in amusement. "Minimal," she repeated. "As expected." Around her, Dominion officers watched the tactical displays with open disdain. Humans had a reputation, newcomers, survivors, adaptable, yes, but weak. No natural armor. No claws. No fangs. Soft creatures who relied on tools and alliances. The Concord whispered about them, speculated, exaggerated. Today, the exaggerations would end. "Broadcast channels?" Zaelvira asked. "Open to the Galactic Concord," another officer answered. "Observers are watching." Good. She wanted witnesses. Below them, the human outposts clung to the planet's surface like an afterthought. A scatter of metal structures half buried against storms and radiation shielding. No orbital defenses. No interceptor craft. No signs of evacuation panic. Zaelvira frowned. "Where are the fleeing vessels?" she asked. The sensor officer hesitated. "None detected, High Huntress." That displeased her. Fear was supposed to come first. Running. Screaming signals. Desperate launches. That was how prey behaved when the Dominion arrived. "Deploy ground forces," she ordered. "Flush them out." Dropships screamed through the atmosphere, their heat signatures slicing into the planet's clouds. Zaelvira watched the feed as Dominion soldiers disembarked, weapons primed, moving with ritual precision. They breached the outpost doors, expecting resistance. They found silence. Empty corridors. Power still running. Supplies untouched. Personal effects abandoned neatly, not in haste. "Report," Zaelvira snapped. "Structure secure," came the reply. "No bodies. No traps. No resistance." Her irritation sharpened. "Search again." As if summoned by her impatience, a lone figure stepped into view on the external cameras. A human. He emerged from the shadow of the outpost slowly, hands visible, posture relaxed. No armor. No visible weapon. Just a dark uniform marked with faded Terran insignia. Dominion soldiers raised their rifles instantly. "Hold," Zaelvira commanded, eyes narrowing. The human stopped several meters away from them. He looked ordinary. Medium height. Graying hair at the temples. Calm eyes that lifted to the sky, not the soldiers. "He's alone," an officer said incredulously. Zaelvira leaned forward. "Magnify." The image sharpened. The human's expression wasn't fearful. It wasn't defiant either. It was attentive, like someone waiting for a cue. "This is not how prey greets a hunt," she murmured. She opened a channel. "Human," Zaelvira said, her voice echoing across the battlefield. "You stand before the Dominion. Kneel." The human tilted his head slightly, considering. Then he did something unexpected. He smiled. Not wide. Not mocking. Just enough to suggest he'd heard something interesting. "My name is Elias Rook," he said calmly. "Commander, United Human Compact." A murmur rippled through the Dominion bridge. "A commander? Here? Alone?" "You will kneel," Zaelvira repeated, irritation seeping through her tone. Rook glanced at the soldiers around him, then back toward the sky, toward her ship. "No," he said. But I won't resist. Another pause. Another violation of expectation. Zelvira felt a flicker of something she did not name. Curiosity, perhaps. Take him, she ordered. Alive. The soldiers moved in, binding his wrists with energy restraints. Rook did not struggle. As they turned him toward the dropship, he spoke again. How many ships did you bring? He asked casually. The soldiers ignored him. Zelvira did not. Enough, she answered coldly. Rook nodded once, as if that confirmed something for him. As the dropship lifted off, Zelvira watched the planet below. For a brief moment, sensor readings spiked, gravity fluctuations near the planet's core. Minor. Inconsequential. Stellar interference, the sensor officer said quickly. Zelvira dismissed it. Her attention was on her prize. The human was brought aboard the flagship, marched through corridors designed to intimidate, vast ceilings, spined architecture, trophies embedded into the walls. Skulls. Preserved remains. Entire species reduced to memory and warning. Rook's gaze lingered, not in horror, but in assessment. You display your kills, he observed quietly. Yes, Zelvira replied as she joined him, towering over his restrained form. So the galaxy remembers what happens to those who resist. He met her eyes. Do they remember the ones who planned ahead? She laughed sharply. You mistake compliance for wisdom, human. Maybe, Rook said. Or maybe you mistake silence for absence. She studied him now, truly studied him. No trembling. No elevated heart rate. No desperation. Just patience. That will change, Zelvira said. When the hunt begins. She turned to her officers. Prepare the broadcast, she commanded. The Concorde will watch this one closely. As Rook was led away, the flagship's lights flickered, just for a fraction of a second. No alarm sounded. No one noticed. Except the human, who closed his eyes briefly, as if listening to something only he could hear. And far below, deep within the unstable heart of Virex 9, ancient machines began to wake. The chamber was built to overwhelm. Its ceiling vanished into shadow, ribbed with curved metal that resembled the inside of a colossal beast. Pale light bled from embedded veins along the walls, illuminating displays mounted like trophies, skeletons suspended in stasis fields, preserved hides, crystallized neural cores. Entire civilizations reduced to artifacts and arranged with ceremonial care. Commander Elias Rook was brought to the center of it all. The restraints around his wrists hummed softly, suppressing muscle response and neural impulses. They were strong enough to stop most species. He tested them once, gently, more out of curiosity than effort, then relaxed his arms. High Huntress Zelvira descended from an elevated platform, each step deliberate. Her presence silenced the chamber. Officers straightened. Soldiers froze. This was her domain, her theater. You recognize this place? She asked. A trophy hall, Rook replied, scanning the displays. Or a warning? Zelvira's mandibles flared. Both. She gestured toward a floating relic, an elongated skull with fractured ridges. The Ketheri. They believed endurance equaled strength. They lasted longer than most. Rook studied it. How long? 6 cycles. He nodded. Not long enough to matter. A ripple of displeasure passed through the nearby officers. Zelvira stopped in front of him, towering close enough that her shadow swallowed his. You speak boldly for prey, she said. I speak plainly, Rook answered. You mistake the two. She circled him slowly. Her steps were quiet despite her size. Your species fascinates the Concorde. Fragile biology. Short lifespans. Yet you persist. Why? Rook's eyes followed her movement, not intimidated, not submissive. Because persistence doesn't come from bodies. It comes from habits. Explain. We adapt, he said. When the environment kills us, we change how we live. When enemies outgun us, we change how we fight. When extinction looks inevitable, We stop asking how to win and start asking how to endure. Zelvira laughed, sharp and cutting. Endurance is just slower failure. Only if time favors you, Rook replied. The huntress paused. That answer unsettled her more than she liked. She turned to an officer. Begin the broadcast. Lights shifted. Holographic projectors activated, revealing translucent symbols along the chamber walls, galactic Concord identifiers. Observers tuned in from dozens of systems. This was no longer interrogation. This was performance. Zelvira faced the projections, then Rook. Behold, she announced, a human commander captured without resistance. Witness the truth behind the rumors. Rook glanced at the hovering Concord sigils. You chose an audience, he said. That's brave. Confidence, Zelvira corrected. Same word, Rook replied. Different outcome. One of the Dominion officers stiffened. High Huntress, permission to. Denied, she said without looking. Her focus was fixed on the human. She leaned closer, lowering her voice. Your kind colonizes worlds no one else wants. Radiation, unstable gravity, toxic atmospheres. Why choose suffering? Rook considered before answering. Because hardship filters out excuses. On easy worlds, weakness survives longer. A murmur ran through the Concord channels. Zelvira straightened. You believe that makes you strong? No, Rook said. It makes us honest. The flagship shuddered, slightly. Barely noticeable. The lights dimmed for a breath, then returned to normal. An officer glanced at a console. Minor fluctuation. Internal gravity compensator lag. Zelvira waved it away, irritated by the interruption. She had control. She always did. She stepped back, raising her voice for the broadcast. Humans claim courage. Yet when faced with annihilation, they hide on the edges of civilization. Rook shook his head. We didn't hide. We learned. She stopped again. Slowly turned. Learned what? How predators think, he said. You announce yourselves. You demand attention. You want fear first. Her eyes narrowed. And what do humans want? She asked. Predictability, Rook replied. Silence followed. Not the reverent silence of awe, but the uneasy kind that lingered too long. Zelvira recovered quickly. Enough riddles. She extended one clawed hand, gesturing theatrically around the chamber. This is where the hunt is sanctified. Where prey runs. Where hope breaks. She leaned close again, her voice dropping into something almost intimate. Why don't you run, human? The question echoed, carried across Concord channels, translated instantly into 100 languages. This was the moment they had come to see. Rook looked up at her. For the first time since his capture, he smiled. It wasn't wide. It wasn't cruel. It was small and certain, like the final piece clicking into place. Because, he said calmly, you already did. The chamber froze. Zelvira recoiled a half-step before catching herself. Explain. Rook didn't answer immediately. He tilted his head, listening, not to her, but to something distant. The lights flickered again. This time, alarms chirped softly before being silenced by automatic overrides. An officer spoke, tense. Sensor arrays are reporting inconsistencies near Virex 9. Gravity readings are shifting. Zelvira rounded on him. Clarify. Localized distortions. Artificial in nature. The Concord symbols pulsed brighter. Rook finally spoke. You chased us to the edges, he said. You assumed that meant retreat. It didn't. Zelvira stepped toward him, fury sharpening her features. You are restrained. Surrounded. Your fleet is nowhere near. Rook met her gaze. Correct. Then what did you mean? She demanded. I mean, he said evenly, that when you committed your entire hunting force to this system, you left yourself predictable. The ship shuddered again, harder this time. Consoles flared red across the chamber. High Huntress, an officer said, voice tight. Multiple ships are reporting maneuvering resistance. Gravity wells are increasing. Zaelvira's confidence cracked, just slightly. Rook's smile faded. Not into fear, but into focus. You came to prove we were prey, he said. We came to prove something else. Zaelvira stared at him, realization creeping in like cold. Outside the flagship, unseen by the chamber's walls, space around Virex 9 began to bend. And the hunt, at last, began to turn. The first Dominion ship lost formation without warning. Its engines flared, then stuttered, as if space itself had thickened around it. The vessel drifted sideways, hull groaning under forces its designers had never planned to counter. Seconds later, another cruiser reported the same failure. Then another. On the flagship's bridge, alarm tones layered into chaos. Gravitational vectors are destabilizing. A navigator barked. We're being pulled off axis. No, not pulled, redirected. Zaelvira slammed a claw against the command rail. Stabilize! Increase counterthrust. We are at maximum, came the reply. The field is not natural. The Concorde symbols still hovered in the trophy chamber, their silent presence now unbearable. Observers watched as the Dominion's perfect formation unraveled. Commander Elias Rook stood quietly at the center of it all, restraints humming, posture steady despite the tremors. You did this, Zaelvira hissed, turning on him. No, Rook said. You did. The moment you brought your fleet here. The ship lurched again. This time, the artificial gravity faltered. Several officers stumbled. Displays flared crimson with cascading warnings. Report! Zaelvira demanded. Localized gravitic spikes across the system. An officer replied, struggling to keep his footing. They're activating in sequence. Planetary origin. Rook exhaled slowly. Virex 9 has an unstable core. Humans didn't fix it. We learned how to speak its language. Zaelvira stared at him, disbelief giving way to something sharper. You turned a death world into a weapon. We turned it into a question. Rook replied. You answered by arriving in force. External feeds flickered onto the chamber walls. Space around the planet twisted visibly, warped into invisible currents that dragged at Dominion hulls. Smaller vessels were already colliding, their shields flaring uselessly as physics betrayed them. How long? Zaelvira asked through clenched mandibles. Rook met her gaze. We started preparing this system before your species charted it. Her claws flexed. You expected us. We counted on you, he corrected. A sharp chime cut through the noise. Hi, Huntress, a communications officer said, voice tight. Unidentified contacts emerging from blind zones. The feeds shifted. Human ships slid into view, dark-hulled, angular, unadorned. They did not charge. They did not broadcast threats. They took positions along stable corridors the Dominion could no longer reach. Zaelvira felt the chamber close in around her. This was never a rescue, she said quietly. Rook nodded. Rescues are reactive. This was a demonstration. The flagship shuddered violently. One of its escorts tore apart as a gravitic mine detonated nearby, space folding inward with silent violence. Zaelvira spun on Rook, fury blazing. You let yourself be captured. Yes. To die? To be certain you committed fully, he said. Predators don't retreat when prey surrenders. They overextend. For the first time in her long career, Zaelvira tasted fear, not as instinct, but as realization. This will not save your species, she snapped. You will make enemies beyond counting. Rook's expression hardened. We already have them. What we didn't have was clarity. Another alarm cut in. Multiple Dominion vessels disabled, an officer reported. Command cohesion is failing. Panic is spreading. Zaelvira straightened, drawing herself to full height. Enough. With a violent gesture, she triggered the release on Rook's restraints. The energy field snapped off. Several officers gasped. Zaelvira stepped close, lowering her voice so only he could hear. I will kill you myself. Rook flexed his wrists once, then let his hands fall to his sides. He didn't raise them defensively. I know, he said. She struck without warning, claws flashing toward his throat. Rook moved, not faster, but earlier. He shifted inside the attack, driving his shoulder into her center of mass, using her momentum against her. The impact sent them both staggering as the ship bucked again. Zelvira recovered first, strength and mass on her side. She slammed him into a pillar, claws digging into the metal beside his head. You are weak, she snarled. Rook coughed once, then met her eyes. Individually? Yes. He pressed the control embedded in his sleeve. The pillar behind him retracted instantly, dropping Zelvira forward. She stumbled, off balance for a fraction of a second. That was enough. Automated fields snapped up around her, pinning her limbs mid-strike. She roared, thrashing against restraints she hadn't sensed until they closed. Rook stepped back, breathing hard but steady. You rely on strength, he said. We rely on preparation. She glared at him, chest heaving. Finish it then. No, Rook replied. You're not the point. The chambers shook as another Dominion ship was crushed by converging gravity fields. The Concorde symbols pulsed brighter, recording everything. Zelvira's voice dropped, raw. Why didn't you run? Rook considered her for a long moment. Running teaches nothing, he said quietly. Surviving teaches everything. The flagship's power dipped. Emergency lighting flooded the chamber in harsh white. Outside, human ships advanced, not firing, not posturing. They simply waited as the Dominion fleet broke apart under forces it could neither understand nor escape. One by one, transmissions from Dominion vessels went silent. The hunt was over. Hours later, the system was quiet. Wreckage drifted in distorted orbits around Virex 9. Human ships moved methodically among them, disabling what remained, rescuing survivors, Dominion and otherwise. On the Concorde channels, classifications were being rewritten in real time. Humanity, reassessed. Status, adaptive apex. Threat level, strategic. Commander Elias Rook stood on the observation deck of a human command vessel, watching the red dwarf star burn on, indifferent to what had changed around it. An officer approached. Dominion command structure has collapsed. The Concorde is requesting statements. Rook shook his head. They saw enough. He turned away from the viewport. Behind him, Virex 9 continued to groan and twist, its ancient machines settling back into silence, their purpose fulfilled. Humanity hadn't chased the galaxy. They had waited. And when the hunters came, the universe learned the difference.